Hey everyone, it's Nina. Thanks for joining me today for a new video. Today's project uses a very special stamp set from Gina Designs and Brutus Monroe, and also an exclusive embossing powder that is part of this whole entire collaboration. This stamp set is called Seeds of Joy. Now, if you don't have this particular stamp set, you could totally make this card with a different stamp set that is floral themed. Just swap out the stamp that I'm using for something else and then follow along with the techniques that I'm using and you'll be able to create something extremely similar. So I'm going to start first by the coloring. And for the coloring, I'm only going to show you pieces because it took me a very long time to color this image. I'm using Copic markers to color. For the greens, I did a 3-color blend. I used G28, G09, and G16. And these colors worked really well together, and I really like the bright green that it has for the lightest color, and then it's got a nice deep rich green for the darkest. So I colored all the leaves with this color, and as you can see, I started off the coloring by showing you it in real time, and you can see how long it was going to take me to do all this. So I did all the leaves, and then I went ahead and started working on coloring the flowers. Now, I just loved the purple embossing powder that was part of this collaboration, so I used that as the inspiration for the colors that I chose to color in this image. So the colors I used were BV31, BV01, BV04, and BV08. And I'm going to color all of these petals individually with these markers. It took me a very long time to do this because there are a lot of petals. Your image that you're using, if you're not using this exact same stamp set, may not have this many petals, and so it'll take you quite a bit faster than it did me. However, I really loved the process. Coloring is very therapeutic. It's very calming, as many of you know. So I just kind of dived in and relished the calmness and had a really nice time coloring this flower. So I'm going to go ahead and speed this up. As you can see, I'm just going to keep coloring every single petal the exact same way. And then I moved on to coloring the other flowers in this image. I used those exact same markers, and I'm just trying to keep the darkest colors at the bottoms of the petals and then the lightest at the top, just to give it some dimension. Okay, so I'm pulling out my fine tip scissors and fussy cutting this out, and then this will get layered onto my card. If you didn't want a fussy cut, you could have just gone ahead and stamped this right onto your panel, which is going to be a panel for an edge-to-edge shaker. I need to color my panel because my flower is actually going to be layered on top, so I need to color the panel before I glue the flower on. So for the ink blending, I'm using Hydrangea ink from Simon's Stamp, and I'm going to start ink blending from one corner in towards the center. I'm using blending brushes to do this. This happens to be Simon's Stamp's larger blending brushes, and I'm working on Simon's magnetic glass mat. This is actually a really handy surface for stenciling and all sorts of other inky techniques, and because it's white, you can also see the color that you put down on top of it. So I really enjoyed working on this surface, and I get a lot of questions asking about that, so I thought I would mention it here. After I went ahead and did the blending on one corner, I'm bringing in a little bit more color from the other side, and I'm going to try to leave a little bit of a light area right along that one side just to kind of give a little bit of brightness. I don't want the entire panel covered. I will cut this down to be slightly smaller than an A2 sized card, and then this flower piece I'm gluing right down here along the left-hand corner of the card. I'm also going to trim off the excess and save those pieces and start gluing those around the main flower image just to kind of trim things up a little bit more and add a little bit more interest to this. They were going to get thrown out anyway, so it's worth going ahead and saving them for other areas of your project. So I'm just carefully cutting those off and reusing any pieces I can. And once I have my arrangement and the way I like, we're going to go ahead and turn this into our edge-to-edge shaker panel. So I have some Simon's Stamp red line tape, and I'm covering the back side of my edge-to-edge shaker card with this tape. If any of you have watched any of my more recent videos, I've shown a lot of edge-to-edge shaker cards, and so you probably know what's coming next. We're going to go ahead and remove the release paper off of the adhesive and lay our panel down onto our plastic. This plastic is very thin, flexible plastic from some stamp packaging. Any trash plastic that you have, as long as it's very thin and flexible, you'll be able to use it for a shaker card like this. So I'm just going to fold over 3 edges, and if I have any excess on the corners, I'll just trim that off. And then before I close up that final edge, I'm going to throw in all of my sequins. So I pulled in a couple of different sequin mixes. This blue and white one is from Simon Says Stamp. And then I have some of these purple sequins from Pretty Pink Posh. I thought they matched up really nicely with the purple colors in this card. And then finally, I wanted to throw in a few clear sequins. And I used a very small sequin for the clear ones. They almost kind of create a little bit of a sparkle effect. Because they're so tiny and they're clear, they kind of catch the light more than the other sequins do. And so I just like the really tiny ones when I throw in clear because it just makes that sparkle. So I'm going to shake this all up and get those sequins moving around so that way they're nicely and evenly distributed throughout this shaker card. And then we're ready to go ahead and put this onto a card base. So I'm going to use an A2 side fold card from Simon Says Stamp to go ahead and be my card base. So I'm going to have the fold along the top here so we have a nice landscape card. The next step is to stamp our sentiment. Now normally I would have stamped this onto white cardstock, but I really have enjoyed stamping onto Simon Says Stamp glossy cardstock. So this is their white glossy cardstock, and I'm using embossing ink to stamp that greeting onto the paper. And then I'm going to bring in that new embossing powder from Brutus Monroe. It's so pretty. And we're going to go ahead and sprinkle that on top. I can't tell you how gorgeous and crisp embossing is on top of this white glossy cardstock. It's literally a dream. So I'm going to go ahead and heat set this. The paper doesn't warp. It does a really nice job taking the heat. And I'll use my fussy cut scissors to go ahead and trim this out. But you could have cut this down into a simple rectangle if you didn't want to go through the trouble of fussy cutting. So either way, however you cut it out, the sentiment is going to get put down along the bottom portion of the card, along the right-hand side, kind of layering up a little bit with the flowers that are trapped inside of the shaker. And interesting, I actually had a question on my YouTube channel recently asking if you could put an image or a die cut inside of an edge-to-edge shaker card, and this card is a great example of how you can do that. So don't be afraid, you can put things into your shaker card like this giant flower, or if you didn't want to do that, you could have glued it right on top. Either way, I think this card turned out so pretty. I'm really loving the purple. Purple is a very trendy color right now, and I just think it turned out so cool. So I hope you were inspired. I hope that either if you want this stamp set, I have it linked below in the video description below. But even if you don't have the stamp set, I encourage you to try out the techniques that I shared today, whether it was the Copic coloring, the ink blending with the floral arrangement inside of a shaker card. I hope something out of this video was inspiring and will encourage you to play with something that you have in your stash and make a card that's similar. So thank you so much for tuning in today. I really hope you enjoyed. I can't wait to come back and share more with you all. Until then, I will be looking forward to seeing you soon, and thanks so much for watching.